Mhm.
All right, we are ready to begin our next session. It begins right now, and if I can ask everyone to just cease your conversations. And I'd like to introduce to you, and he can see me. Hi, Anthony. Nice to see you again. And
How are you?
Anthony Henry is actually Zooming in from Canada. And he has a guest that's also going to be joining us, and I see him up there on the top of the screen.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Right, Cosley Edwards.
I'm watching Ypsilanti. Tony is presenting to Ypsilanti SDA Church. Tony is doing a
All
prostate
right, so
presentation to
we
a
are
church in
ready
Ypsilanti,
to
Michigan.
begin, and so I want to talk with the guests.
I have a friend from Jamaica who used to go to Wellington.
All right, so those of you
She was
who
Miss
are watching
Ypsilanti,
with
and I
Zoom,
corresponded with her.
if you
And
have
then when I
questions
said let's
at the
talk
end of
about
this
the water
presentation, you'll want to
foundation,
send a message in the
she
chat.
said she wanted to speak to someone.
Oh, actually, okay. So we can actually hear you now. It's hard for me to read lips. And so if you have a question during our Q&A time, we are able to hear you through the speakers here that are in the sanctuary. So I guess at this point, I will turn it over to Anthony and Cosley. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And thanks for having us. My name is Anthony Henry, and I'm with an organization called the Walnut Foundation. We're based in the Greater Toronto area in Canada. And with me today is Cosley Edwards, who hails from Arkansas. Cosley is a lawyer by profession. Myself, I'm a financial advisor. So we're not coming to you from a professional perspective today. We're coming to you from a patient perspective. So for myself, I first became of my own personal risk with prostate cancer due to my family history. My father was diagnosed with stage 4 at the age of 64. A huge shock for someone who was a compliant patient.
Last year, it kept him away. Unfortunately, I had to have 2 seasons.
Mom, I'm trying. You are talking.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened there. Can you hear me?
There's a lady nodding her head. I believe she can.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. So as I was saying, yeah, so it was a shock for us because my dad was a compliant patient, and yet here he was at 64, diagnosed with extended family prostate cancer. So my father, unfortunately for him, didn't last for too much longer after that. He passed away at age 68. It was a big wake-up call for us, however, in my family. And so my brother and I, we got to start screening for prostate cancer. I started at age 64. He subsequently went on, my brother, to have prostate cancer at 57. For myself, I was diagnosed at 64, at 53, sorry. I am currently 62. So just want to share my screen a little bit with you and go through some of the slides. Right. It looks like it says the host disables screen sharing. And
Okay, you can go ahead and share your screen now, Anthony.
awesome, thank you. Okay, so my talk today centers around removing the shroud from prostate cancer. So as I was saying before, the experience with my dad made me realize that it was so important for men to become more responsible for their health and not depend on, medical professionals entirely. So in Canada, we created an organization. It's called the Walnut Foundation. It was founded by two gentlemen who were impacted by prostate cancer. One was a professor at the university here, Ryerson University. It's now called Toronto Metropolitan University. So when he was diagnosed, he felt like, he worked in the space, should have a better understanding of this whole issue, and yet he felt like what we would call a fish out of water because he didn't know enough. And he felt like if he didn't, then what about men with less education who didn't work in the healthcare space? And what can be done to help them? So part of my reaching out to your group today and, to Black men all over the world through the Walnut Foundation is to continue this mission that was envisioned by Dr. Winston Isaac to get men talking about prostate cancer, sharing their experiences. And so that's what this is all about. So we are a registered nonprofit charity established in 2007 and incorporated in 2010. We received our charitable status in 2012. We are 100% volunteer based. We have a number of trained, what we call peer navigators, and we put them through a training program that's run out of one of the teaching hospitals here in Toronto, Princess Margaret Hospital. So that's what I mean when I say we have trained members to help with our prostate cancer journey. And our funding comes from an annual walkathon and from sponsors to our conferences and symposiums. So basically what we do is we bring awareness to the community through education. So we have monthly meetings, we do conferences, we do church presentations like this one. And the topics include prostate cancer in Black men. We touch on mental health, diabetes, financial and estate planning, and our conferences on prostate cancer and survivorship. We just had a few last weekend, actually. And that one was looking at what happens to Black men, men after treatment for prostate cancer, right? So some of these resources, if you follow us, if you log into our conferences or check out our website, you can get information there about some of the things that we do. We also partnered with one of the community health centers up here. It's called Taibu Community Health Center and University Health Network to provide free PSA screening for Black men. This was done on September 30th. We had over 100 men who attended these sessions. And the challenge here is to try to get our men to start screening earlier. The statistics says that we're 76% more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer, and we're 2.2 times as likely to die from prostate cancer.
What time we here now? 7.
So the Walnut Foundation, the aim really is to provide a safe and confidential environment for dialogue and support to Black men with prostate cancer. We have men who have gone through different treatment options, whether it be surgery, radiation. Some people like myself who are low risk are on what we call active surveillance, which is becoming more and more popular of late, given improvements in research right? So our support group is open to men from Canada, US, and the Caribbean, and Africa as well. And the reason for that is we're targeting the areas with the highest incidences and deaths for prostate cancer. We also take part in research targeted to the Black community. We're currently involved in one looking at genetics, the role of genetics. And then there's another one as well looking at how cancer affects racialized adults. So we're tapping into the community to get people's feedback on, you know, what their experience with the healthcare system has been like, how they were treated, as a way of recommending changes. We also fund Black students in medical programs at the U of T here in Toronto. So we set up an endowment last year with $26,000 to start that process. And we're looking to expand that program. The reasoning behind that is a lot of our members come and they say to us, you know, we're trying to find a Black urologist or a Black healthcare professional, and there aren't any, you know. So we're trying to encourage, you know, more of our people to go into certain parts or aspects of the profession. As I mentioned before, we are not medical advisors, neither Causely or myself. So we're coming to this from a patient perspective and trying to look at ways that we can help to improve education in the community, improve understanding. I know for the GTA here, what we're trying to do is to create a knowledge hub so that, you know, there can be a group of men that folks can reach out to when they need help. And part of the outreach effort is to speak to, you know, Black communities in different spaces, to share our experiences and to share the resources that we already have on our website, you know, as a way of trying to improve the stats in our favor. So the experiences, you know, what we talk about are the, you know, our own experiences from a patient perspective. So we generally advise men to consult their own doctor, medical teams about their specific situation before embarking on any health program. I mentioned the stats before, and, you know, the big takeaway from this chart really is just, you know, what the differences in impact when we look at deaths per 100,000. You know, you see that for all races, the death per 1,000 is 21.4. Whereas when you look at the Black population, you're looking at, you know, more than double that rate, as I mentioned before. So this is just another way of looking at the stats that I gave before, talking about us dying at a higher clip, 2.2 times more likely to die. You can see that in the chart. And this information is from the World Health Organization. Another way of looking at some of these statistics is this particular chart here. So this one also from the WHO, and it's looking at deaths per 1,000. This was stats taken, you know, back in 2020, and globally, it shows a number of deaths for that year, and the death per 1,000 was like 7.7. But when you look at these places, these spaces where we are, Zimbabwe, Barbados, Haiti, Zambia, Jamaica, you know, you see that's up, you know, in the high 30s, 40s per 100,000. So huge difference. And it means that our community have to take notice of these numbers. We have some US data as well. And for Michigan, we see the same kind of trends, you know. When you look at the white population, for example, at the bottom here, it's showing Michigan 17.3 per 100,000. But when you look at the black population there, 33.1. So very similar rates of death to the Caribbean and West African countries. You know, in spaces really that's supposed to be, you know, first world health health systems. So it speaks to some serious problems, and we need to be aware of that. So what is the prostate? It's a gland about the size of a wallet, and it's located between the bladder and the rectum. So it's right in here.
Right, so walnut.
And what are the uses of the prostate? The prostate is not essential for life, but it is important for reproduction. So it produces some sex hormones. It produces semen to carry the sperm, and it's part of the urinary flow control system that's used during urination. Prostate cancer is cancer that originates in the prostate. So it's basically abnormal cell growth, and it's usually encased in the prostate in the case of prostate cancer. And the detection process is simple and effective. You know, we do that by doing the monitoring that I mentioned that I started doing at age 40, the PSA test. So this is just a basic blood test, and it just measures the levels of something called the prostate specific antigen in the blood. So the higher it is, generally, the more likely that there's something going on. It is possible to have high PSA and it not be cancer, as well as it could be a low PSA and that's not cancer. But generally, you know, the higher the PSA level is, the more likelihood is that there's something going on that might require further investigation. Another test that's done to you know, give a sense as to what's happening with the prostate is the DRE, or the digital rectal exam. So this is where the doctor inserts a glove finger into the anus to check the prostate itself, the circumference of the prostate, to see if there's rough spots or abnormal cell growth. Having done the first two tests, if there are problems, and in particular the PSA, if they find that that number is going up over time, then they might refer you on to a biopsy, which is exactly what happened to me in 2015, January. I was referred to do a biopsy. And the biopsy is the only definitive test that can, you know, tell you that you have prostate cancer and what stage it's at. And that then dictates what treatment is recommended for you. So for Black populations, we generally recommend that you start screening at 40. The accepted recommendation for the general population is to start at age 50. And so we as a community have to be aware of those, you know, that standard of care. And where we're not being urged to screen, then we might want to have that conversation with our medical. Oops, I think we're moving a little bit too fast. So in both Canada and the US, 1 in 8 men will develop cancer in their lifetime. Black men of African or Caribbean ancestry have doubled the risk compared to non-Black men. I mentioned the higher mortality rates and higher death. One other thing I want to add in here is that we are more likely to be at risk if we have a family history, so a father, a grandfather, or some close family member like that who has prostate cancer. we're also likely to have more aggressive strains of prostate cancer. A part of the challenge for us is, and many of us are unaware of these stats, that we are at higher risk. And then the other issue is the physical impacts of some treatments may reduce sexual activity, which is very troubling for men who are performance oriented, because of the perceived threat to our masculinity. There's also a lot of myths and misinformations and disinformation, which all of this contributes to this wall of silence around prostate cancer. And so why it's so important for us to engage and be talking to each other when it comes to this issue. Many Black men do not take their health seriously enough. Inactivity, poor diets, obesity, all contributing factors. And then there's indifference, right? This could be because of men feeling invincible and posturing. So it's very important for us to take full advantage of the healthcare system, where help is available. And we also want to challenge the misinformation associated with prostate cancer. And of course, many of us do not manage our cancer diagnosis in a rational and measured manner. We ignore our symptoms, we defer and don't seek help because of the potential side effects. The good news about prostate cancer is that if it's caught early, it can be well managed, more so than most other cancers. But there's a problem. Some of the symptoms of early prostate cancer are not unique. Some of those early signs might be frequent urination, pain on ejaculation, decreased libido, or loss of libido. But, again, men might not pay enough attention to some of these things because it might not be a sign of cancer really. It could be an infection, perhaps, that would cause some of those original, those symptoms. Fortunately, this problem is adequately addressed by getting screened. There are simple, and I mentioned before, the PSA, the DRE, and the biopsy. So we recommend, again, to start screening at age 40. Screening yourself regularly is very important, but it's up to us. The takeaway, the benefits of regular screening: the cancer will likely be caught early. You have more options for treatment. The treatment options, if it's caught earlier, it's less drastic. There's less damage to the nerve bundles for sexual arousal if caught early. And then, of course, the peace of mind, With late stage prostate cancer, you have the cancer spreading to the lymph nodes, then to the bones and the organs and soft tissues. You have symptoms like blood in the urine or in semen, back pain, bone pain. These are all signals, signs of late stage prostate cancer. So the idea behind doing these talks is to encourage, open dialogue, early screening, and to catch this before it spreads and become a problem for us. So what if you're diagnosed with prostate cancer? If it's caught early, you may be invited to make a choice of treatments: active surveillance, surgery, radiation. All right. The challenge, though, is that the side effects from these treatments are incontinence, for some, erectile dysfunction, fatigue, absence from work. So these are all considerations, and it impacts us differently. Some more than others. Some regain their function after, maybe not 100%. So it varies from person to person. it's important that we inform all male members of our family about the genetic linkages to prostate cancer and make them aware of the benefits of regular screening. We want to encourage male members of your family to consider preventative routines, so things like diets, exercise, very important. And I think you had a session earlier talking about diets. What if you're diagnosed with prostate cancer? There's a genetic test that could be done. It's called the BRCA2, for example, is one test that could be done. Somebody like myself, for example, if I were positive for the BRCA2, then probably I wouldn't want to be going the path that I'm going right now. I probably want to go treat right away and get on with it. It's important to compare notes with the men in our family, for us to know our family history. We need to know who our fathers are. So important, because it really touches on how you're impacted by some diseases. It's also important to attend a support group tailored to Black men. I found that participating with men who look like me, who understand me, has been very helpful in terms of, how I deal with this thing. And so I'd certainly highly recommend that you find a group in your area and, connect with the men there, the men who are willing to share. We do have a support group and it meets virtually once per month. Causely joins in from Arkansas. The next one is on November 30th. Meetings are at 7 p.m. And basically you have men who are newly diagnosed or recently diagnosed who might be having some challenges, who can share their experiences and help you to navigate through the process. Our message is early detection saves lives. Get yourselves checked. If diagnosed, communicate with your family. If you need help, contact us because we have a built-in system here. You can email us info@thewalnutfoundation.com or call us at 905-799-2759. And our website is there. And now I'm going to stop sharing and just ask Causely to say a few words about his particular situation briefly, Causely.
Thank you,
And
Anthony.
then we'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Anthony. My name is Causely Edwards, as was said before. I'm a prostate cancer survivor at this juncture. And I'd like to share a little bit with you about my prostate cancer journey. It actually began with a physical examination. I get a physical examination twice a year. And on one of the occasions, my doctor recommended that I had a PSA test done because of my age. And he also did a DRE, a digital rectal examination. My PSA came back, which was a little elevated. It was 4.5, and I think 4 is the acceptable top number. And so mine came back at 4.5, which showed that standing alone wouldn't necessarily mean anything, but that coupled with a digital rectal examination gave my doctor some concern. So he referred me to get a biopsy, and the biopsy indicated that I presented a positive test for prostate cancer. They measured.
Agora, ready,
Okay. They measure the prostate by what they call a Gleason score. My Gleason score is a 3+3, which is a 6. 6 sounds high, but that's the entry level of the measurement process. After my diagnosis, we discussed a number of treatment options. My wife and I went in, we sat down with the urologist and we discussed treatment options. Some of the treatment options include surgery, having surgery to remove the prostate, some kind of radiation treatment, or you can do nothing because of where I was. And do nothing really doesn't necessarily mean don't do anything. But what happens there is I go under what they used to call watchful waiting. The more contemporary term today is active surveillance. And that basically means that you're being monitored by your medical care team on a regular basis. So during the course of the year, you might go in for 2 or 3 PSA tests, and they also recommend a biopsy along the way. And the objective of the biopsy is to monitor the cancer and to see whether or not the complexion of the disease is changing. I remained in active surveillance for about 4.5 to 5 years. Subsequent to that, I had another PSA test, I had another biopsy, and I had an MRI. And all of those showed that my disease had changed. My cancer was beginning to grow. So at that juncture, I decided, well, I need to do something. But before getting to that point, as Anthony said, join a support group, educate yourself, inquire about what's going on with your body, have good conversations with your doctor, because as a patient, you have to be an active participant in your care. So what I did, I joined support groups. I learned about the disease. I attended seminars and presentations like we're doing here today. I had conversations with my treating professionals. I did reading, I did research, I did all of those things just to be better acquainted with the disease. I determined that surgery was my best option as opposed to radiation. And that decision was based upon the fact that what I learned along the way was if you have radiation as your first line of defense, surgery becomes more difficult if the radiation doesn't get all your disease. So I opted to have surgery first with the, praying that that they're going to get all the disease. And in fact, at the end of the surgery, I was assured that they got all of my disease. I'm presenting a negative screen now for PSA. So at this juncture, I'm good. Thank the Lord. But, cancer is a strange animal and it could very well come back at some point in time. We're praying that it doesn't. I had surgery in June of last year. So I'm 1.5 years out from surgery. Some of the issues a man will face after surgery includes ED. It's a natural side effect. We'll have some urinary incontinence issue. That's also a natural side effect. The urinary incontinence issue usually slows down and go away with time. If it doesn't go away, if it doesn't slow down, then there are other options we can exercise. One of those include going to physical therapy, and there are specialized, what they call pelvic floor therapists who will work with you to try and strengthen your pelvic floor muscles to try and improve your performance and your control, your urinary functions. So that's my story. That's where I am. My recommendation is all men at a certain age, 40 and above, especially if you're Black, you get screened. Take affirmative steps to educate yourself on the disease. Join support groups like this and other support groups. I'm a member of 3 support groups. I'm a member of the group that Tony mentioned. I'm also a member of a national support group called ANCAN, which, is a national group. You can join, you can participate in their meetings from anywhere in the country. And you can do a lot of reading and research and engage. The operative term is engage. Engage your treating professionals. Sometimes it's very difficult to have a conversation with your doctor. Some doctors are really busy and they don't have a lot of time to talk to you. But it's your body, it's your healthcare, and it's your life. So you have to engage, you have to ask the appropriate questions. And if the doctor is too busy to talk to you, maybe we should try and build a relationship with another doctor who will treat us like a human being and have the time to visit with you and discuss your disease. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity today.
We can open up for questioning now. And thank you for listening to us. Hope you got some good takeaways from what we had to say. I don't see any questions in the chat as yet.
Were we that bad?
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Oh, good. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think folks are muted anyways, so.
Yes. I cannot hear the speaker.
I think we cannot hear you. Sorry.
She's muted.
I'm asking a question. Okay, good.
Okay.
As when I get in the mix, I mess it up. Anyway, my question has to deal with the overall question of being a living soul on the face of the earth.
Right.
God put us here in time, space, and matter.
Mhm.
And he's put us here for a purpose. That's to glorify him in everything we say and do. But over the last decade or so, with the elders and the other boards of the church, especially the Seventh-day Adventist Church, I have some over-encompassing questions. What are we doing here with health? Our health, yes.
This is a quick Q&A
to
for them.
answer to question and others.
Okay, what's
We
the
as
question for Anthony?
Adventists are doing a poor job of maybe about 50% of what we're doing now is not in tune with God's plan for us here on this earth. We're talking all about cancer or blood pressure when we should be at the top of the scale, knowing what the solutions are and
Okay.
applying them. That's the
All right.
question.
Okay.
When are we going
So
to get
that was
to
a
that
comment.
point?
Thank you.
When are we going to get to that point?
Okay, thank you. I just would like to say to you, Anthony, I appreciate this information. My father was diagnosed with metastatic prostate cancer. It had already gone to the bone. And the only way that he was really checked into it is because my mother said, after having not seen him for a long time, said, "You've lost a lot of weight." And it was that made him go to the doctor. Then he was tested. His PSA was like in the thousands.
Wow.
And because it had spread, he did a lot of research and made some significant changes in his diet, eliminated sugar, and really basically the diet that Dr. Williams talked about, instituted that diet. And while the physicians gave him a prognosis of 3 years, he lived 10 years. And that's specifically related, he believes, to making the lifestyle changes that would slow, at least, and eliminate the progression of the disease.
And the physicians don't have all the answers. And so, like your father did, he clearly took charge of his life with the help of the Lord, managed his diet well, took some affirmative steps to improve himself, and it worked. And this is what we have to do. This is the message we try to deliver from time to time, that we have a role to play. And as I said earlier, have good conversations with your treating professionals, because it's only that way that you're going to educate yourself and know what's going on with your system. And your father did a wonderful job.
Yeah. The other thing I would say too is that a diagnosis of prostate cancer should not be seen as a death sentence, right? Even my father, who only lived 4 years after diagnosis, I mean, it's still 4 years, right? But it's so important to not give up. So the first thing we want to do is encourage screening so we can catch our disease earlier. And if we should happen to be one of those that fall into this, the stage of being diagnosed with it, don't give up, because what we're saying is there are supports that are available that can help you to navigate through the process. Things like diet, exercise, and not burying your head in the sand. It's so important.
I do know because my job is actually I'm an oncology nurse navigator. So I deal with a lot of patients that have different cancers. And it's gratifying to know, and I don't know if you've heard this from your health professionals, that prostate cancer is actually usually a very slow growing cancer. And the physician has told my father, it is probably likely that more men will die with prostate cancer than from it. But that
Absolutely.
doesn't mean that you just say, okay, well, I'll take my chances and not get screened or take care of things. But that was gratifying to know that it is actually a slow growing cancer. I don't know if you've heard that information.
Well, both Anthony and I have lived under active surveillance for a long time. I was in active surveillance for 4.5 years. Anthony, how long have you been?
I'm what, 8 years now on active surveillance.
Right. So that diagnosis doesn't mean death.
Mhm.
You know, it can be managed, and as long as you're staying on top of it, then you can act accordingly if the complexion changes. Like in my case, my numbers changed, which gave me the go ahead to do something else. And so, you know, as long as we're managing it, then we can live with it for a very long time.
And so it's so important to be on top of it, basically, you know, because if you're not on top of it and the disease is aggressive or starts off like mine, but then changes its complexion, then you have to be ready to act on there.
Okay, we have another audience question.
Yeah, I was, I think just recently I was reading an article on CNN where they were stating that in some cases, a lot of doctors are allowing the patient to have a lot of surgeries, unnecessary surgeries, because if the patient is older, a lot of time they don't even need the surgery, just, you know, active surveillance would be much better than actually removing the prostate.
Well, that is probably true. Statistically, men of a certain age are not encouraged to have the surgery. It's somewhere in the 70 range or thereabouts. It depends on the individual, and of course, it's also going to depend on their treating professional. But at a certain age, you know, the question becomes, do I want to put my body through the trauma of having surgery? Or is there another treatment option that will give me some results, you know, anticipating that I'm going to live another 10 or so years? Do I really want to have surgery as opposed to some other viable option? Because there are other viable options as well. So this is where taking charge of your body comes into play. Having great conversations with your treating providers comes into play, and just knowing what is going on in the science. The science is critical. You know, we're all believers in the Lord, and we know what the Lord can do. But the Lord has also given man the ability to use these scientific tools to preserve our lives.
In fact, I would add one of the things that we find in our support group is that not all participants are impacted the same way. So that then leads to, you know, differentiations in treatment options for some of us based on our disease profile and other issues. Surgery might be the best option, right? For others, it might be, let's not do anything at this point. Let's just see what happens, because in some cases, the cancer is dormant for many years. Right? For others who are diagnosed later on, where it's metastatic, they might have to just do hormone treatment and not do surgery. For yet some others, you know, based on what's being presented, you know, how your profile is being presented, they might do some combination of surgery and radiation, or maybe all three, you know. So it varies from individual to individual. It's not going to be exactly the same. But
Can you speak to a little bit of what happens during the support group? There are men that may be timid about putting it all out there with a support group. And my experience in facilitating support groups is patients have found it extremely helpful because they get more practical information from individuals who have gone through or are going through the same thing that they are. But just to cut from your perspective, the benefit of a support group.
well, I mean, I know from myself, it's been very helpful because what you're getting there is people, let's say you did surgery, for example. Then the men there who've gone the surgery route. And if you have surgery, then you have certain side effects. Issues around incontinence and issues around erectile dysfunction, issues around how long those experiences last. And people are willing, frankly, to share how they dealt with it, you know. And that's very helpful. Sometimes, you know, you deal with medical professionals, you know, they don't have a lot of time very often to explain everything in detail to you. So it's good to have that one-on-one peer support where you're talking to your peer in your terms. You don't feel intimidated. And it's just a bunch of guys who are willing to share. And it's so important.
And sometimes, you know, when we get into our own little world, we feel isolated. We're there and we're by ourselves. And we're not aware that there are other people who are on the same path. They're fellow travelers. So the support groups put you in this environment where there are people who are similarly situated. And you can talk about the issues, the commonality of the issues. You know, I've been having this dreadful feeling or something like that, and the other person goes, "Oh, well, I've been having that same sensation. I've been having that same reaction," and you get to realize that there's some common thread that binds us and give us that pillar just of support, because we know there are other people traveling along the same path as us. And we can share these feelings, we can share these emotions, we can share the different experiences that we have. And there's value to that.
You know, the other part of it is, you know, somebody might say, well, I tried this particular medication, or I used to be on that particular medication for my enlarged prostate. But after a while, they switched me to this other one. It seems to be working better for me. You know, we're not saying it's going to be better for you, but maybe if you talk to your doctor, you know, or your treating professional, then they might, you know, recommend that you switch to the one that this person has, or some other thing that's newer and better, right?
You mentioned that this support group is an outlet for African-American men. Are other men of other racial backgrounds invited or attend this particular support group?
Usually
Absolutely.
not. We try to focus on our community, because one of the things we find is, because Cosley has been to, you know, mainstream support groups as well. So have I. Very often we don't see people that look like us there. Whereas when you come to ours, you know, some of the guys, they feel more comfortable to talk, to share how they're feeling, or explain in their vernacular, you know, what's going on with them, where they might not feel so comfortable to go talk to all these experts and, you know, guys with their spreadsheets in some of these mainstream groups.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience or online? Okay, we have one question coming from the audience here in a second.
Have either of you gentlemen looked at some of the natural means that they've had to address shrinking the prostate. I saw a doctor come on and he was talking about upping the level of lycopene in a man's system, and how at certain levels it actually replicates the same as using some of the pharmaceuticals like Avodart. Do you have a response to that?
I do. I have tried multiple natural homeopathic type things. I have tried multiple of them and I didn't get any results. Now, one of the things that the Walnut Foundation does, we do not discourage people from trying those things if they would like to. However, we also suggest that you take a look at mainstream medicines and what's offered in the mainstream community as well. But personally, I have tried a number of these things. I've drank all the teas. I've tried all the potions. I've tried everything, and it didn't give me the relief that I was seeking. So the answer to your question is yes, I have.
Any other questions? All right, Anthony and Cosley, I think that we have exhausted the questions, and we appreciate the time that you've taken to share with us the resources that are available to men that need to screen for prostate cancer, maybe have prostate cancer, or know others that have that information. So I appreciate it, for one, because I didn't know that that existed. So I certainly want to be able to share it with my patients. So thank you very much.
And one thing, you might want to look around in your local community and see if there's a local support group in your area as well. I'm in Arkansas, and we have a local support group here that I've been a member of for many, many years, and I find it very valuable. I find the association with the Walnut Foundation to be very valuable, and I also belong to a national support group. Again, I find all of those valuable because you're getting information and from people who've been there, people who've been down the same path, and you don't know everything. And as Anthony alluded to, there are people who have tried different things and find that different approaches and different medicines and different protocols and different procedures work for them. And they may share that with you. And that gives you an opportunity. If you're going down and something is not working, that opens up the window of opportunity for you to get some knowledge for next time when you see your treating professional to say, you know, hey, doc, I heard about this thing. And he or she may or may not be familiar with it, but it certainly opens up that window for them to take a look, if nothing more.
Well, thank you for that reminder. I do know we have an organization, the Cancer Support Community, that hosts a number of different support groups for different cancer types. So that is another resource that we can take advantage of. So thank you very much for the time and for the information.
One other thing I would add,
yes, Anthony,
is folks can also go to our website. I'd recommend you go check out what's on there at www.thewalnutfoundation.com. For those who are new at this, you can check out our videos. Just look for our videos, and they're very short, they're not long videos. Just kind of introduce you a little bit more to the topic so you can start your education journey. And again, don't forget support groups. You have lots down there in the US. We tap into some of those as well. But I think it's important that us as Black people, Black communities, share our knowledge and our experience wherever we might be, right? Because we have a common problem. More likely to be diagnosed, more likely to die from this thing. And, perhaps if we're engaging each other better, we can help to improve the odds for all of us. So thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. All right, everyone, that concludes this portion of our Health Summit for today. I want to remind you that on tomorrow at 2 p.m. on the lower level, we will have Daryl Johnson to come and give us some information, some health information from his perspective as a lifestyle enthusiast, and also to do a cooking demonstration. So we're going to see a man in the kitchen. So I'll be looking forward to that and tasting the food and see if it's any good. And actually, my experience has been men actually do a pretty good job. So, if I can ask everybody to stand, and we'll have closing prayer. Father in heaven, we want to thank you for the time that you've given us so that we can educate ourselves about how to be better Christians, better stewards of our health that you have given us.